Assalamu alaikum. So today we are going to do teaching speaking skills. Basically, first of all, we are going to discuss what is speaking. So speaking is the process of building and sharing meanings through the use of verbal and non-verbal symbols in a variety of contexts. This definition is given by Chennai in 1998, and that is on page number 13. So basically, this definition means that speaking is not only through words, but through non-verbal symbols as well. Like, for example, speaking can be through your gestures as well, right? For example, you just nod. True sense में तो speaking वो है जब when you are using the words, but that is supported, you can say supported by the non-verbal signals, okay, in different contexts. Another definition of speaking is that speaking is an interactive process of constructing meaning that involves producing and receiving and processing information. This definition is given by Brown in 1998 and John Burns and Joyce in 1997. So according to this definition, it means speaking involves producing something and receiving and then processing. It means when we are communicating with someone, so not only listening is going on, but speaking is also there. Okay, so if somebody is listening, it means that particular person is receiving the data and processing, and after that, that particular person who is a listener will become a speaker and will start producing or speaking that language. Okay, so speaking not only involves producing something, but obviously you respond to something. It means you are receiving something and processing it as well. So it means in order to have a better communication, you have to be a good speaker and a listener both. Now, what is teaching speaking, right? Right now we are talking about how to teach speaking. So produce the English speech sounds and sound patterns, use words and sentence stress, intonation, and rhythm. Okay, so when we are teaching speaking, especially in case if it is a school, like you people are doing B.Ed, so it means you will be doing your teaching practices in schools, right? So there, if you are asked to teach speaking, then it means you have to focus on the sounds and the sound patterns, the stress and the intonation and the rhythm, right? Then you have to select appropriate words and sentences according to the audience situation and subject matter. So even the selection of the words and sentences should be according to the level of the students, according to the audience. If in general you are having any communication, then it means you have to keep the audience in your mind, or the situation or the subject matter. ठीक है, एक ही बात एक तरह से हर एक से नहीं कही जा सकती. ठीक है, the way that you will speak with your close friend will be very different from the way that you will speak to a stranger. Okay, so selection of the appropriate words and sentences is very important, and this is what you have to teach in to the students in teaching speaking skills. Organize their thoughts in a meaningful and logical sequence. This is also important. There are, you can say, when, especially if you talk about the school students, so their minds are not or properly organized. अगर especially primary level पे देखें तो वो बच्चे होते हैं, ठीक है? So being a teacher, you have to organize and make their thoughts more meaningful and logical so that they can produce a better speech. Okay, use language as a mean of expressing values and judgment. Use the language quickly and confidently. Okay, so if the teacher is using the language to express values and judgment, and she's quickly expressing her views in the language, it means the same will be adopted by the students. So that is a kind of a teaching as well. Now, how to teach speaking? Okay, you must have studied GTM, ALM, direct method, right? There are different methods of teaching a language, right? But here we are just talking about teaching speaking. So how can that be possible? So there are different ways. Number one, communicative language teaching, that is very famous these days, right? Which is mostly used everywhere, in not only in Pakistan but throughout the world as well, right? And the second is collaborative learning. Like communicative language teaching means real life situations are given, different games are played with the students in order to make them speak or communicate. Okay, so this is more of a situation. जैसे अगर हम GTM की बात करें, तो जीडीएम में कोई भी टेक्स्ट लेके और उसको ट्रांसलेट किया जाता है, ठीक है। डायरेक्ट मेथड की बात करें तो कल्चरल टेक्स्ट लिए जाते हैं, बट देयर द कम्युनिकेशन इज वेरी लेस. In case of communicative language teaching, because real life situations are given to the students, so that's why they are compelled to speak in that particular situation. Okay, so this is how teaching speaking can be done in the class. Collaborative learning, that is working in pairs and group in collaboration. Okay, when some tasks are given to the students in group, it means that kind of method is known as collaborative learning. Okay, so these are the two important ways through which teaching speaking can, I mean speaking skill can be developed of any level of students. ठीक है, बाकी ये कि वो जो पुराने ट्रेडिशनल मेथड्स हैं, क्लासिकल मेथड्स हैं, दोज कैन नॉट बी यूज्ड फॉर टीचिंग स्पीकिंग स्किल. Now, if you talk about teaching a speaking skill, I have told you previously that there are four skills that we focus on when we are talking about the language, that is listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Listening and writing are receptive skills, speaking and writing are productive skills. Now, these two are known as oral communication skills, and these two are written communication skills. And right now, we are focusing on the oral communication skills. Now, how to develop oral communication skills? Because when we talk about listening or speaking, anyone, so it means अगर listening है, तो it means speaking will also be continued somewhere. ठीक है. If we are talking about the speaking, it means listening is also involved. Speaking तो बगैर listening के हो ही नहीं सकता. चलें, listening में तो आपने ये कर लिया कि listening activity हो गई, क्लास में practice करवा ली, without speaking के भी चल जाएगा. But speaking cannot be done until and unless listening is there. Okay, so in combination, they are known as the oral communication skills. Now, the main problem is the sub syllabus requirement. That is, what is the requirement of the syllabus and how it can be fulfilled in order to make the students communicate in the class or outside the class. Language and speech, psychological and linguistic characteristic of speech, ways of creating situations. Just a minute. Okay, so ways of creating situation, prepared and unprepared and inner speech, and types of exercises. Okay, so basically, if you talk about the current syllabus that is given, especially at a school level, so there are many issues and problems in that. The types of the exercises that are given are they have very less scope of conducting any communicative skill or communicative, you can say, activity in the classroom. Okay, so and the ways of creating situations in the class is also a very difficult task, right? Teacher has to work a lot. She has to do very hard work in order to create a situation in the class so that the students can speak. Prepared and unprepared and inner speech, so there are different types of speech. A prepared speech होती है, we are going to discuss this in detail in the next few slides. Okay, so these two types, as I've just mentioned in the previous slide as well, that productive is speaking and receptive is listening, and both these things are taking place at the same time when we talk about the oral communication skills. Okay, now language and speech. When we talk about language, then it is philological, physiological, and logical. Whereas if we talk about the speech, then it is psychological and linguistic. It means when anybody is speaking, then it means linguistics aspects should be there, means the proper language, proper structure should be there, and the psychology of the human mind is also involved in speaking. ठीक है, जो आप कह रहे हैं तो आपके माइंड में क्या है, आपको किस तरह से वर्ड्स का सिलेक्शन करना है, कौन से आपको लिंकिंग वर्ड यूज करने हैं, क्या रेलिवेंट इंफॉर्मेशन है, क्या नहीं है, आपको क्या बोलना चाहिए, क्या नहीं बोलना चाहिए. So all this is related with the psychological aspect of speech. ठीक है, psychological and the selection of the words, the selection of the cohesive devices is related with the linguistic aspect. ठीक है, so it means you have to focus on these two aspects when you are making any kind of speech or any conversation within the class or outside the class. Now, Psychological characteristic of speech in detail. Speech must be motivated. Speech is always addressed to an interlocutor. Speech is always emotionally colored, and speech is always situational. Now here we आप speech इसको दो तरह की speech ले सकते हैं. एक वो speech जो proper आप speech दे रहे होते हैं किसी competition में या कहीं पे आपको बोलने के लिए कुछ कहा गया, that speech. Or the other type of speech is when you are having a communication with any person, anyone else. Okay, so speech must be motivated. If we talk about that particular speech in the true sense of a speech, then that should be motivating, right? Even if you are speaking or having any communication with someone, so speech should be your speech should be such as it will be motivating the other person to respond to you or to take part in whatever you are trying to say or do. ठीक है, especially when you are teaching स्पीकिंग स्किल्स, तो आपकी अपनी स्पीच भी ऐसी होनी चाहिए कि स्टूडेंट जो है वो मोटिवेट हो कि हाँ भाई मुझे भी बोलना है, मुझे इस एक्टिविटी में पार्टिसिपेट करना है. Speech is always addressed to an interlocutor. Interlocutor means the one who is listening to you or the one who is going to respond to your speech. Okay? So it means there should be someone. तभी वो speech कहलाएगी when you are addressing someone. Okay? And that someone is known as the interlocutor. Speech is always emotionally colored. Emotionally colored means that is full of your emotions. Okay? And speech is always situational means you always speak because of some reason or the other. ठीक है, कोई ना कोई ऐसी सिचुएशन होती है, कोई ना कोई ऐसी बात होती है जिसकी वजह से आप बोल रहे होते हैं. बिला वजह तो कोई भी नहीं बोलता. अगर बिला वजह खामा कहीं कोई बैठे बैठे कुछ भी बोल रहा हो तो वो सब उसको फिर बोलते हैं कि भाई शायद कुछ प्रॉब्लम है इसके साथ. ठीक है, तो इसलिए स्पीच इज ऑलवेज सिचुएशनल. यू ऑलवेज स्पीक व्हेन देयर इज सम रिक्वायरमेंट, व्हेन देयर इज सम सिचुएशन. Now, if we talk about the linguistic characteristics of dialogue speech means when there is two-way speech. मैं बोल रही हूँ, फिर जिससे मैं बात कर रही हूँ वो बोले, फिर मैं बोलूँ, फिर वो बात करें दूसरी. तो this is known as the dialogue. ठीक है, when two people are there and they are speaking something. So if we talk about the linguistic characteristic of such conversation, then number one is the use of incomplete sentences, that is ellipses and response. ठीक है, like for example, where do you live? So in Charkasi. ठीक है, how many books do you have? One. Now एक चीज और हम डिस्कस करेंगे, डिफरेंस बिटवीन स्पीकिंग एंड written language. ठीक है, तो now here you can see that when we are talking about the speech, then there are incomplete sentences are acceptable. यहाँ पूरा सेंटेंस नहीं कहा जा रहा कि I live in so and so. How many books do you have? I have one book. Okay, this is not necessary. If we talk about the linguistic characteristic, it means this incomplete sentences are allowed in speech, in speaking. Okay, the use of contracted forms, doesn't, wouldn't, haven't, can't, can be used in a speech. Okay, whereas in the written form, usually the full forms are allowed. The short forms are not allowed in written. The use of some abbreviations, like for example, lab, bike, maths, fridge, computer, etc. These abbreviations are frequently used in our daily communication. ठीक है, हम लेबोरेटरी नहीं कहते, हम लैब कह देते हैं. ठीक है, हम मैथमेटिक्स नहीं कहते, मैथ्स कह देते हैं. मोटरसाइकिल नहीं कहते, बाइक कह देते हैं. रेफ्रिजरेटर नहीं कहते, वो फ्रिज कह देते हैं. Right? So abbreviations are used in the speeches rather than the full forms. The use of conversational tags. Conversational tags जो होते हैं वो short words होते हैं ना, जैसे वो है ना, ठीक है ना, ओके, ये वाले जो होते हैं, जो कुछ लोगों की बहुत आदत होती है हर बात के बाद बोलने की. ठीक है, so those are known as the conversational tags. So these conversational tags are also very frequent when we talk about the speech. Yes, now this is prepared and unprepared speech. What is prepared and unprepared speech? Now let's have a look at it. Basically, when you are giving any speech in front of the audience, right, जो आपके competitions होते हैं या कहीं आपको जाके बोलना होता है कि भाई आपको presentation देनी है, चलें presentation देते हैं अगर class presentation, तो that is actually the prepared speech. ठीक है, the speak following the plan, speak on a subject suggested by the teacher, speak on the text, read, summarize or give content, discuss problem, touch upon in the text, read or head, help a foreigner example to find the way to some place. These are usually the planned ones. ठीक है, when there are planning, then it means it is prepared speech. और जो unprepared speech होती है उसमें कोई planning नहीं होती, और planning नहीं होती तो those actually are known as the extempore speeches. ठीक है, कि अचानक से टीचर ने कोई क्वेश्चन पूछ लिया क्लास में, तो वो प्लानिंग नहीं होती, वो प्रिपेयर्ड नहीं होती, वो अनप्रिपेयर्ड में आता है. ठीक है, हाँ, प्रॉपरली टीचर ने कोई सब्जेक्ट कोई टॉपिक दे के कहा है कि भाई आपको प्रेजेंट करना है, तो दैट विल कम अंडर प्रिपेयर्ड स्पीच. ओके, नाउ हाउ कैन यू ऑर्गेनाइज कम्युनिकेटिव एक्टिविटीज इन द क्लास? Number one is picture difference task. Pictures can be given to the students and you can ask them to point out the differences between the pictures. Okay, so in this way students will speak in the class. Group planning task. Group task can be given to the students, as I've just mentioned before little time ago. So group task can be given to the students as well. List sequencing task, the one that we did in the listening skill, के listening में जो जो जिस तरह से जो process हुआ, कौन सा sentence पहले आएगा, कौन से बाद में आएगा. So sequencing can be done. This will also be helpful in speaking skill. Okay, practicing speaking skill. Pyramid discussion, role plays, stimulation, all these are also the types of communicative activities that can be done in the class. Brainstorming, story completion. Brainstorming and story completion are usually in the written form, but they can be discussed in the class. Okay, like for example, in listening skill, I have asked you to write a story through the keywords. राइट, सो कीवर्ड्स के थ्रू जब आपने स्टोरी लिखी तो उसके बाद उसको टीचर ने सुना भी. सो इन दिस केस दिस विल बिकम communicative activity when you are allowing your students to speak out, ठीक है, of the written material. Now, here are some of the suggestions for the teachers in teaching speaking skill. Provide maximum opportunity to students to speak, means create activities in such a way that will involve more and more students and that will allow the students to speak. Try to involve each student in every speaking activity. Okay, like for example, if your class is of 25 to 30 students, you can easily ask them to do any kind of activity, any group work can be done. और group work के अलावा अगर आप कोई ऐसी एक्टिविटी भी कर रहे हैं, कुछ पूछ रहे हैं, तो आपकी कोशिश ये होनी चाहिए कि भाई every student should participate in the activity. ठीक है, अगर एक में नहीं करा तो जो दूसरी एक्टिविटी करा रहे हैं तो उसमें दूसरों को इन्वॉल्व कर लें. मीन्स ऑल द मेंबर्स, ऑल द स्टूडेंट्स शुड बी इन्वॉल्व इन द स्पीकिंग activity. Okay, reduce teacher speaking time in class. Isme here this teacher is supposed to speak less and she should ask the students to speak more, right, so that they will communicate and they can have a better speaking fluency. Indicate positive signs. Positive signs means giving positive feedback from the teacher. When teacher will give a positive feedback to the students, then students will feel more comfortable in speaking in the class. Do not correct students' pronunciation mistakes every time. Okay, involve speaking activities not only in class but also out of the class. So here it means that not only that students should be given tasks within the class, but there should be some task given which through which they can communicate outside the class so that they can understand the how communication takes place. Circulate around classroom to ensure that students are on the right track. This is very important. The teacher should keep on moving around the class if they are speaking, so that number one, teacher can ensure that they are using the correct language, the target language. And secondly, this will help the students, if they have any confusion, they can easily ask the teacher about it. Okay, so she should come continuously keep on moving in the class. Provide the vocabulary beforehand and diagnose problem. Okay, usually when speaking is done, at that time teacher provides some vocabulary, right? Before she asks them to speak on any particular point or any particular topic. Finally, conclusion. Teaching speaking is very important part in language learning. The ability to communicate clearly and effectively contributes to the success of the learner in school and access later in every phase of life. It makes the students more active in the learning process, and at the same time makes their learning more meaningful and fun for them. Okay, so it means you can see how important speaking is, right? Speaking helps the students not only in the class but outside the class as well, and it helps in activating the learning process as well, because it makes the activities more meaningful and more fun. Okay, so that's all for teaching speaking skills. Thank you. These are some of the references. Thank you.